Well, I think we're on, as far as I can tell. If you cannot see us, hopefully it'll pop in. But it says that we are, nope, that's not it. Okay. There we are. Okay. We'll call the meeting of the House Ag Committee to order, and we'll have a couple of hearings today. First up, any bill introductions? Second call, any bill introductions, those online? Last call, bill introductions? Okay, I believe the last day is Monday for individuals. Okay. A couple of other things before we get started. You should have received the hemp production report and the Upper Arkansas River Conservation Enhancement Program performance report. Those are required to be presented to the legislature, so it's assigned to our committee. You can just review those at your leisure or weekend reading, and then if someone wants to give a report, I'm looking at you, freshman. No, I'm just kidding. But those are just something that you can have for your purview if you're curious of what those two things are going on. So with that, let's go ahead and do our first bill hearing of this session in this Ag Committee. First up is a hearing on House Bill 2103. And from the revisor's office, Kyle, you are with us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone in the room hear me okay?
Yes. Go ahead. Explain the bill, please.
All right. Perfect. So House Bill 2103 would create the Kansas Pesticide Waste Disposal Program, and it would allow up to $50,000 to be transferred annually from the existing Kansas Agricultural Remediation Fund to the new program. Section 1 of the bill would establish the new program, which would be administered by the Secretary of Agriculture for the collection and disposal of pesticide waste in the state. Section 2 of the bill would create a new fund to accompany the program. All money credited to the new fund would have to be used by the Secretary of Agriculture for the pesticide waste disposal program. Subsection B on page 1, line 22, states that the Kansas Agricultural Remediation Board may approve an annual transfer of monies from the existing remediation fund to the new Kansas Pesticide Waste Disposal Fund in an amount that shall not exceed $50,000 in any calendar year. Subsection C would require that the Secretary send the Remediation Board a report on or before January 1 of each year that would concern the expenditures made from the pesticide waste disposal program that year. Subsection D would ensure that any interest that's produced from the fund gets credited to the fund. Section 3 on page 2 would amend the Remediation Act's existing definitions to add definitions for the terms Kansas Pesticide Waste Disposal Fund, Kansas Pesticide Waste Disposal Program. And then on page 3, starting on line 5, there would be definitions for the words pesticide and pesticide waste that would be defined. The term pesticide waste would mean any pesticide that A, is not exempt from registration under a federal law called FIFRA, B, is not eligible for sale or distribution, and C, is not otherwise eligible for return or disposal. The rest of the definition there for pesticide waste is a non-exhaustive list of examples of pesticides that fall under the definition. Finally, Section 4 would amend the statute that states the purpose of the existing remediation reimbursement program. A line would be added to state that one purpose of the program is to provide funding to the new Kansas Pesticide Waste Disposal Program. House Bill 2103 would become effective upon publication in the statute book on July 1, 2021. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions for Kyle? All right, thank you. We'll stand by for the next one. I didn't look. Is there a fiscal note on this? Do we have somebody from, okay, from, who else, who's joining us for the fiscal note? There's none. Oh, no impact. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to testimony. And first up in the proponents, we're calling Randy Stuckey from the Kansas Grain and Feed Association and the Ag Retailers. Mr. Stuckey, welcome to committee. Remind you, if you have your mic on or online and have your mic on, please mute.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's a little awkward with everyone behind me, but we'll forge ahead. For those that don't know me, my name is Randy Stuckey. I serve as General Counsel and Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for a couple of agribusiness interests in the state. That's the Kansas Grain and Feed Association and the Kansas Agribusiness Retailers Association. Principally, the Kansas Grain and Feed Association is the commercial grain industry in the state of Kansas. We have membership of 99% of the storage capacity in the state. So that's essentially all of the commercial grain storage in the state of Kansas. And the KARA, Kansas Agribusiness Retailers Association, are the 700 locations of the agribusiness retailers that sell input products and fertilizer and fuel to farmers. So our members are not farmers, but we sell from KARA and KGFA, both in the front end and the back end of the production agriculture in the state of Kansas. So that's who we are. And our interest in this bill that proposes to take $50,000 a year from an existing industry ag chemical remediation fund, to transfer that then to this pesticide waste disposal fund, was supported by both KARA and KGFA, and that's important because the existing fund that this money is being drawn from, the Ag Chemical Remediation Reimbursement Fund, it's been around for about 20 years. This is financed by completely, there's no state general fund money that goes into this fund. This existing fund is financed by the checkoff program, essentially, on the commercial grain warehouses. That's a portion of their warehouse fee every year goes to this fund. And then also the ag retailers, and they pay in through the pesticide and fertilizer registration fees to sell those products in the state of Kansas. You have to register them with the Kansas Department of Agriculture annually, and a portion of that fee goes to this remediation fund, in addition to custom fertilizer blenders and pesticide dealers, the licenses for those two industries as well. A portion of those fees every year go to this remediation fund. So that fund generates about $1 million a year. And up until 2019, for about 10 years, that $1 million a year was insufficient to pay out all of the applications to the fund annually. So there was always a backlog of applicants. And these people, they have ag chemicals and fertilizers at their facilities, and they clean up those facilities, removing that ag chemical from soil and groundwater. And you can imagine when you remove the soil, truck it away, land apply it at ergonomic rates, and then refill the soil, the trucking fees and everything. These sites, these remediation sites, can be easily $300,000, $400,000. So they're capped at $200,000 per site out of this fund. But that's why there is such a demand on that fund. Again, that's about $1 million a year. And it wasn't until last year, in September of last year, the first time in about 10 years where there was enough funding, enough revenue in that fund to pay out all the applicants that submitted applications for reimbursement for the remediation projects. It was about that time when the Kansas Department of Agriculture came to industry, both KGFA and KARA, and asked if a portion, up to $50,000 annually out of that fund, could be used for a different purpose. And that would be for the clean and environmentally accurate and lawful disposal of now non-registered pesticide waste products. Essentially, those pesticides that had been purchased at one point were now no longer registered by the EPA for one reason or another, and were being held by either ag retailers or farmers, ag producers. And if you're familiar with an ag production facility, generally there's going to be a cabinet full of these pesticides they're no longer registered, and they could be staying around for decades for that reason. There's no real good way to get rid of them outside of this process that this fund would pay for. And so we being the KGFA and CARA, thought that was a great idea to use up to $50,000 a year out of this existing fund, again, that's paid for by industry fees, and transfer that money to KDA to be able to use for this pesticide waste disposal program. Now, the program itself does exist. It's been funded at KDA for a couple of years now through an EPA grant. But those grants aren't guaranteed, and I think they've spent down most of the money that they've had. I think there was a second round of grant funding that's being utilized now. But once that's gone, outside of another EPA grant, there would be no funding for the program. We think the program's a great idea. We think it's good stewardship and good public policy. For that reason, we support the annual transfer of up to $50,000 a year from the remediation fund to this pesticide waste disposal fund. And again, it would be able to be utilized by ag producers and ag retailers. I think it was a very good explanation of the bill, but we would certainly stand behind the bill, hope that you would support it, and be glad to answer any questions that you'd have at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions for Mr. Stuckey? Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very comprehensive, Randy. I appreciate your testimony on that. Since we don't have any opponent testimony or neutral testimony, is that right? And you've, of course, had conversation with stakeholders. Was there any negative brought up? And if so, how did you resolve it?
So not that I'm aware. The main stakeholders of this bill are our industries. We certainly pay into the fund, and it's our products that would be able to be utilized to utilize the fund to dispose of non-registered pesticide products. But in addition, the ag producers can all take advantage of this fund as well. So this bill actually was submitted, was introduced and heard in this committee last year, as well as the Senate Ag Committee, passed out of this committee, and then also passed the House floor with no opposition. So it did pass out of the Senate Ag Committee as well. Got held up due to the shortened COVID session last year, but we don't see anything that would be, we haven't heard of any objections to the bill.
Neither are I, and that clears it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of a quick clarifying question. The program already exists and EPA grants fund it. Let's say EPA continues to fund it and then they pour money into that. This is just essentially optional, right? It allows for up to 50,000. So if we have enough grant money from the EPA, then we can just shift money around.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's generally principally why they said up to $50,000. And it's a may, it's not a requirement. So in the event that we do get another EPA grant, which would be great, I know that there is demand on the fund, then we wouldn't have to transfer the full $50,000.
Thank you. Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Randy. And this question may have already come up. With this $50,000, is this a rolling $50,000 every year? Say this year we put in 50,000, the next year they put in another 50, you have 100,000 and so on, and just the pot continues to build up?
Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you for the question. So it is permissive by the board that controls the Ag Chemical Remediation Fund. The Department of Agriculture will approach the board every year and ask for whatever they think the need is, up to $50,000. So it's at the discretion of the board that controls, it's a government-appointed board that controls the Ag Chemical Remediation Fund of how much to transfer. And there will be a report back from KDA to the board annually to say, this is how much we have, this is how much we spent out last year, this is what we think we need, this is our request. So the board would likely not allow a $50,000 transfer if it's just going to add on to the fund that's the pesticide waste disposal fund. Clearly, there is a current need for the ag chemical remediation fund, and those would be the priority for that fund.
Thank you for the answer. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Attacked by my mask. Okay. Also, any other questions for Mr. Stuckey? Thank you, and you'll still be around if we have some other questions when we hear from or read our other folks' testimony.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Also joining us, or with written testimony, but also joining us via WebEx, if you do have questions, if you had a chance, or I guess I say, I believe they're written, anybody online. We have Josh Rowe with the commodity groups, the Co-op Council, Sharia Stafford, or Farm Bureau with John Donnelly. They have written comments. Are you're not for this bill, are you, Kelsey? You are? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I had you down for the other bill. So, oh, okay. Sorry, so come on up. I apologize. I broke protocol, but we're pleased to be joined by the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, Kelsey Olson. So my apologies. I had you down for the next bill. So welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman. It's my apologies because I was slow on getting this testimony provided. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelsey Olson, and I serve as the Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. And I'm here to provide proponent support of House Bill 2103. Pesticides in the state are regulated both by the EPA as well as the Kansas Department of Agriculture through the a couple different acts in Kansas. We have the Kansas Agricultural Chemical Act and the, I just lost my spot. There's two acts, the Ag Chemical Act and the pesticide law. Thank you. And these are very comprehensive laws. They're there to protect the environment as well as the general public when these products are being used. But what does not occur in these laws is it does not prohibit or ban anyone from owning the products, even if they are banned substances. So what happens over time is a product goes out of, it's no longer on label by the EPA. Oftentimes it gets set aside, put in the chemical closet, put in the back of the warehouse, and forgotten about. This inherently is not necessarily a problem unless that container starts to erode and starts to leak, or perhaps the property changes ownership and causes a problem then when they go to settle that estate, perhaps. As Randy did mention, we've ran this grant program twice. In 2016 to 2018 was the first time we had received funds as a sub-grant from the KDHE for $75,000. Over those 2 years, the $75,000 was awarded to 21 applications that removed almost 26,000 pounds of pesticide and chemical waste from the state. Once the funding was expired, that project was put on hold, and we came up with this idea to propose this proposal to create this permanent program. In November of 2020, we were awarded another small grant from the EPA for $31,000. And since then, we have taken applications for 14 entities that are interested in having their pesticide products removed, 2 of which have been completed, and those cost about $6,000. The next 6 are estimated to cost $72,000, which far exceeds the funds that we currently have available. Our grant application process includes, the name, ask how much product there is, how much, what the product might be. They provide us photos if possible. Sometimes these labels have eroded and it's hard to even determine what product is is sitting on the shelf. But we then take that information and work with Clean Harbors. It is an environmental service that will come in and identify the product, safely package it, and then properly dispose of it. The state has a contract with Clean Harbors, which allows for about 2/3 of the costs to be lowered compared to what an individual would be paying, or a business entity if they worked directly with them. So there's a clear benefit for the state to be involved and to help lower that cost to the individuals or the businesses that have these products on their shelf. We're certainly in support of this bill. We don't see that there creates an additional financial burden to the taxpayers, and see overall that this would, with time, hopefully reduce some of that threat and the potential out there for further leaks and damages caused by these expired chemicals. So thank you very much, and I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions? If not, I guess I have one based on maybe some of the last ones. So you administer the grant program now. Is that right, that if this would pass, there would be another board kind of appointed that would not necessarily overlook, but determine where that fee cap would be, or if there would be a rolling? I mean, and have you thought, did I miss something there in that? And the makeup of that board, it would all be industry? Would it be agriculture, and I'm assuming, or what do you have you got that far yet?
So we're not creating a new board, and I might defer to Randy, but the current agri-remediation board would be there to, we would go to them and ask if there is enough funds to transfer to the department to continue this program on a year-to-year basis.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize, but everybody gets one since I got one, so everybody gets a do-over on their phone, sorry. Okay. Is that a good enough explanation for the committee? Okay, that's fine. Representative Carlin?
Thank you. I stepped outside, and if somebody described this, I apologize. How do we remediate this waste? What do you do with it? What's done with it?
I think it depends upon what product we're talking about, but that's what Clean Harbors does. They will package it safely. If it's something that can't be disposed of, they put it in long-term storage containers in a facility that houses it indefinitely. But there can be ways of deactivating the product and safely disposing of it, and it varies whether you might incinerate it, or it might just have to sit there in a safe, secured location.
That's what I was afraid you were going to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Kelsey.
All right, other questions online? Okay. We'll have you back in just a bit, Kelsey. Sorry about that.
No, thank you.
Okay, now we'll go back to, again, we have other written testimony, and they are available via WebEx. Any questions for them or those other presenters? Do you have any other comments other than your written? Your silence will mean no. This is all new, trying to do this and coordinate everything. So, any other questions for it? Yes, Representative Minix.
I noticed, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed the bill said chemicals that have been registered within the last 35 years. Is there any type of program for those types of chemicals that might predate that time period that people find in the back of their warehouses?
Ms. Olson, do you want to comment on that? You can just, yeah, if you just want to turn the mic on, that'd be great.
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to look that up and get back with you. I'll verify that and follow up.
Thank you. I didn't want to argue against your bill. I think it's very appropriate, but there might be a few things left out there that people bring forward that might surprise all of us. Thank you.
Very good. Last call. Any other questions or comments to any of the conferees for the proponent side? Seeing none, is there anyone here or online to testify as an opponent of House Bill 2103? Seeing or hearing none, are there anyone, is there anyone online or here to testify neutral to the bill? Seeing or hearing none, I close the hearing on House Bill 2103. We will now open up the bill on the hearing on House Bill 2102, and we'll call on Kyle to come back and explain what this bill is all about. Don't be chicken. It's starting. It's starting, I know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tried to share a copy of my screen here that shows a current version of the law that we're going to be talking about. House Bill 2102 would update egg repackaging requirements for retailers. And under this current law, a retailer must fulfill an initial list of requirements in order to repackage eggs at all. Once the first list has been fulfilled, then a retailer has to follow a second list of requirements if they wish to grade the repackaged eggs higher than grade B. And from what I can recall from last year's hearing on this bill, the current process goes a little something like this. Retailers, they'll get a shipment of grade A or double A eggs in cartons from the original egg distributor. And if an egg or multiple eggs get cracked at some point, the retailer can just dispose of the whole carton of eggs, or they can follow the initial list for repackaging requirements that's here in KSA 22510. And under that list, the eggs get put into a generic store carton, and that carton must be labeled with certain information, and records have to be kept for possible future inspections of those repackaged eggs. Then the retailer may sell the eggs at a discount as grade B eggs. But if the retailer wants to sell the repackaged eggs at a higher grade, they have to also abide by these requirements from this second list. And so House Bill 2102 would decouple the two lists so that the relabeling and record keeping requirements from the first list would not apply to retailers who want to sell repackaged eggs at their original A or double A grade and in cartons from the original distributor. So jumping to the bill itself, subsection A would state that a retailer may repackage eggs located in a store as long as the requirements in subsection B or C are met. Repackaged eggs may be graded as grade B if the standards listed in subsection B are met. The language in this new subsection B, it's been reworked for clarity, but you'll see all this markup. This is all meant to these are all just technical changes. There are no substantive changes here. And then repackaged eggs could be graded higher than grade B if the standards in subsection C are met. And you'll see here that the first four requirements under subsection C mirror the more generally applicable requirements that were back up in subsection B. Additionally, in paragraph 5, undamaged eggs from damaged containers would need to be placed only into containers that are already labeled with the same distributor and packer information, including the Kansas egg license number or USDA plant number. And here in the rest of the bill, you'll see some additional markups. And again, these are just technical in nature. House Bill 2102 would become effective upon publication in the statute book on July 1, 2021. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Kyle? Seeing none, none online, we'll move on. Thank you. And the fiscal note still shows basically no impact, just the clarifying that, yeah, there's no fiscal effect on the agency operations. So with that, we'll now hear proponent testimony. Up first, we'll welcome back Kelsey Olson, who is the Deputy Secretary for the Department of Agriculture. Kind of like church, probably sit close to the front. Welcome to committee again.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Kelsey Olson. I'm here as a proponent for the House Bill 2102. As Kyle mentioned, this bill cleans up the little bit of the language and allows for a more seamless process to repackage grade A eggs than what was before, and remove some of the labeling requirements and the record-keeping requirements that currently exist in the bill. The Kansas Department's Food Safety and Lodging Program is responsible for administering the egg law, and it has the authority to enter any entity at which eggs are held. These duties would include verifying the quality of the eggs packed and ensuring the record keeping and ultimately protecting the public health. These proposed amendments will allow for greater flexibility and allow for more eggs to be able to be repackaged and sold as grade A without adding any additional conditions or record-keeping requirements. We've worked with the proponents of this bill and are supportive of House Bill 2102. Thank you. I'll stand for any questions when it's time.
Any questions for Ms. Olson? Not seeing any or hearing any? Oh, I'm sorry. It's my bad ear. Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I went through this last year, so I probably asked this question, and I never remember once I get the answer, but there is existing law that allows eggs to be repackaged?
Correct. And if they...
So these are changes to existing law?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, currently, if they have to repackage them, they have to relabel them and write down what lots that they are kept in, and keep those records for resale purposes. And it is a bit cumbersome to many of the retailers, and I believe that's what we'll hear from.
Yeah, and I
from
can
the
see
next
that.
testimony.
I have another question. I remember seeing in the bill, and I don't see it right now, but that it has to be done under refrigeration. Is that correct? Is that still in the bill? Or I don't know if I'm looking at last year's or this year's, but I thought that was interesting, and I would wonder what the Agricultural Department thinks about the need to do that under refrigeration. I mean, it used the words under refrigeration somewhere in here. Kyle, do you know where that is?
It does. It does in under subsection C and then point 7. It mentions maintaining in the good manufacturing practices under the refrigerated conditions. I believe that is in compliance with the Food and Drug Administration, with the USDA, and that's just a continuance or an adoptance of their regulations.
The reason I noticed is I do refrigerate my eggs, and I find them in the refrigerator at the grocery store, but when I was in Europe, they don't refrigerate the eggs. And I don't know how long they can keep them that way, but
they are a stable product. I myself I get my eggs from my father's farm, and those eggs come to me unrefrigerated. But once they are refrigerated, they need to stay refrigerated.
I see. I see. But do you know what the shelf life is, since you have that experience?
I personally do not, but I can look that up for you and get back to you.
I'm just curious because, and I think it's important that we have those standards. If that's there, then we certainly want to follow it, but I just hadn't noticed it before. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Thank you. You have set me up so many, I almost bit my tongue, but we'll wait for those. Anything else? All right, Kelsey, thanks for being here. Stick around just in case if we have more questions. And also, proponent testimony here is representing, well, it's Speaker Michael Neal. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For those of you that were here last year, you've already heard this spiel, and it made it out of the House committee, it made it out of the House, it made it out of the Senate committee, and died on general orders in the Senate. And I was really upset about that, not so much because my client wanted to get it into law, but because I was going to have to come back and endure the egg references and jokes yet another year. But here we are, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back and frankly, Kyle did a great job of reviewing the drafting of this, because it is a redrafted version. It accomplishes the same thing we did last year, but in a much better, I think, in clearer way. So for our purposes, I'm here representing Walmart. Walmart is the prime sponsor of this, although it is a bill of interest to major wholesalers. And not to get too far into the weeds on eggs, but the major retailers are the ones that sell eggs that are graded higher than grade B. So your grade B eggs, many times, you don't really see them because they're used in mixes. And so a manufacturer will use grade B eggs and they'll put them in various types of things, whether it's frozen products or mixes or things of that nature. Your major retail markets will sell nothing but the various versions of grade A, grade AA, extra large, large, medium and small. And so it was natural, and actually the USDA looks at it this way, it was natural to separate out the requirements for those eggs graded above grade B and those that were grade B and below. And that's what this does. And there was a change in the law in 2018 that was probably inadvertent and did not take into account that. So we've talked about what Kansas requires, but before Kansas even gets into the equation, we got the USDA. And they actually do the grading, they'll do inspecting, and that also, the belts and suspenders for consumers is, of course, what the Kansas Department of Agriculture does. So Walmart in particular and major retailers have already got clearance letters from USDA on what they consider to be lot consolidation. That's just a fancy way of saying the opportunity to repackage eggs from the same supplier in the same lot. But you may, just to use a real quick example, you get 12 cartons of eggs in and you have a broken egg in one, and it allows the potential for then within the same lot of eggs to consolidate into 11 cartons, if that makes sense from a consumer point of view. And there was an interpretation of the law that was such that it made it look like if you had to go through all these hoops for grade B, it was better just to throw out the whole carton, and you're wasting product that way. So the retailers wanted to be sure that we brought the Kansas law in alignment and dovetail with what the USDA requires. So if there's any question about we're somehow weakening the law or whatever, we are not. We're just making it consistent with what the USDA already has. In fact, there's like 3 federal laws that apply to eggs, believe it or not, or at least impact eggs. So we do appreciate the opportunity to be here, and really want to credit, first of all, Kansas Department of Agriculture, who worked closely with us and are on board with the changes. And also, I particularly want to shout out to Kyle, who has done yeoman's work to make the bill even better than it was last year. With that, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
All right, any questions? And I'm not sure if this is for Kelsey or who. How does this affect like Cal-Maine or big producers? Is this primarily focused on retail, correct? Or does it have an impact at all on that's a different situation, correct? I'm just thinking as we move this process that, you know, we don't, okay, just want to make sure. The primary focus retail, correct?
My answers are limited to subsection C of the bill and what retailers do. So you exhaust my limited knowledge once you get beyond subsection C.
Representative Jacob, any comment?
Oh, no, let's, for the newbies on the committee, he had a whole list of egg references last year. No yolk. He did.
Well,
He did ask me to check whether, are you there, Trevor?
yeah, I think you would be a better mouthpiece. Thank you.
He just wants to know if it's a
Representative Smith.
crime to poach eggs.
Yeah.
Well, that was
Oh, you're letting me off too easy.
well, we'll let you scramble out of
There
here
we
if
go,
you'd
Mr.
like.
Chairman.
Well, you got to be able to get out if you're over easy, if you will. It wasn't hard boiled. Where do you want me to stop? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. O'Neill? Representative Featherston.
Can I just confirm that I'm hearing correctly? This wouldn't do anything to compromise the food safety of the eggs. They'll still have the same lot number in case there's a food safety issue. Consumers would still be able to know that's the egg from that lot. There'd be no.
Exactly, and there are requirements even for the grade A's. It just would loosen the requirements on the record keeping that's really not necessary for that higher quality egg. And Kelsey's nodding her head in agreement as well.
Thank you.
Good question. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
And we also have written testimony from Hy-Vee, from Emily Swanson, and I believe Judy Swanson is available on WebEx if we have questions for Hy-Vee. So anyone here in the room or online have questions for Hy-Vee? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on. Is there anyone here to testify as an opponent of House Bill 2102 or online as an opponent? Seeing none and hearing none, is there anyone online or here to testify in a neutral position on 2102? Seeing and hearing none, we will now close the hearing on House Bill 2102. Okay, that fulfills the agenda. We will have a probably short meeting on Monday. Of course, no meeting tomorrow. If you have any bill introductions, and it looks like we will have another bill hearing next Thursday. And what your agenda will be redone, and we'll probably work these bills also on Thursday of next week and then move them forward. You will have an agenda. We're still working out to make sure everybody will have it in their email box. And again, if you or your sister are not getting all the material, you should have it either late morning, early afternoon of the days of the hearings, because we all get so many emails, we don't make sure they're not lost. So anything else for the good of the cause? If not, have a great weekend. We are adjourned.